In the King James Version, and then I'm going to read it in the New American Standard Version. They're only slightly different, but it just gives you different perspectives. Romans 12:1. King James first. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. The New American Standard Version says, therefore I urge you, sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Jacob Gibbs is the pastor of Cedar Lake Church out in Michigan, and he has been ministering out there for a couple of years. And Emily's been teaching out there for a couple of years. And Jacob was willing to preach here this Sabbath, and so he's on.
Good morning. I was hoping that my wife would come up with a children's story, because she is carrying our child. We're having a little girl, which my dad says, I don't know what to do with him. But I think it'll be just fine. You guys do live in a beautiful part of the world, you know that? You certainly do. Michigan, I was talking to my friend about coming out here to camp. He says, I wouldn't like it there because I like to see the horizon. You just haven't been here yet. That's the problem. Have not been here.
Just for a while.
There's a unique beauty about Michigan. It's on top of mountains, big plateau, and the valleys are the lakes, I guess. That's all I got. It's not very good. Well, I think I've been here 10 years ago. I think 2010 was the first time I was here. And I've fallen in love with this place. It's a beautiful place. Let's start with the word of prayer. Father, as we just dive into the book of Romans, really looking at one verse, we just ask that, Lord, you would speak to our hearts, you would agitate us, you would move us, you'd cause us to think, you would cause us not just to accept, but to analyze it and, Lord, place your wonders deep inside. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. If you're in a prison camp, I read the Louis Zamperini book before it became a movie, Unbroken, and he was in a prisoner of war camp. And I've done a lot of World War II reading of survival stories. I'd rather be in the Atlantic section arena than the Pacific arena. It just seemed like the Japanese prisoner of war camps were brutal. Louis Zamperini, he was there when he was at the end in Japan when the cry was made, the war is no better news. No better news, the war is ended. Why are there still casualties after war? Why are there still casualties after war? There is one weapon that doesn't stop killing when that cry is made, the war is ended. You know what weapon that is? Landmines. Landmines, I read, they can cost as little as $3 to make. It costs hundreds to thousands of dollars to rid the area clean. Landmines. Different. I mean, everybody has a different stat, but 15,000 deaths per year in 2015, 2018. Landmine deaths. In Cambodia, let's do a little guessing game. Eat on your toes. What's the population of Cambodia? So where is Cambodia? Right? Where is Cambodia?
That's the bit.
Right. So you got it. You know, right there. So it's in the tropical part. I tell you, Cambodia is a beautiful place. Like I haven't been to Cambodia, but I've been to Thailand, And I just imagine the whole area is beautiful. I saw pictures. How many people live in Cambodia? Just guessing that millions.
50 million.
Well, you're kind of making them, squeeze in there. 8.6 million. Guess how many landmines are there? 10 million.
Whoa.
They have more landmines than people. There's every day, if you do the stats, every day people die of landmines. Even after the cry war is finished, there's casualties. We can pick up this theme in Revelation 10 or 12, Revelation 12. We're just going to see this theme, and this is a theme throughout Scripture. Revelation 12, look at verse 10. We know the 7 through 9 section really well. There's a war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels, and they did not succeed, and the devil fell. In verse 10, then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, the war is finished. It's not what it says, but that's now salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God, the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast out. Doesn't it say the war is done? In a sense. But there's still casualties. And they overcame them by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But it says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth. Who are the inhabitants of the earth? Point to the inhabitants of the earth. It's us. Woe. Watch out. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath. Casualties are still happening, even though the war is done. In a sense, we could say the devil has set up landmines, and there's casualties still in this world. Let's do a little discussion, a little back and forth here. What are the landmines that the devil has set up to cause the Christian world to stumble, to cause the Adventist world to stumble, to cause the secular world to stumble? What are the landmines that are still set up? And I was reading an article, this guy asked the internet a question, and whenever you ask the internet a question, you always get the right answer. This was on one of those Ask the Internet a Question websites, and then you have smart people that feel like they want to give good answers. And he said, what's the chances of walking through a minefield and not getting hurt? We'll just tamp it down a little bit and call it hurt. What are the chances of walking through a minefield and not getting hurt? And all these answers, I read all these people who knew more about minefields than I do. What do I know about it? Everybody said 0 chance if they're done correctly. Because the way they're made, the crisscrossing pattern, they're made in such a design that if you walk a straight line anywhere, you'll at least hit one. So what are the landmines? I'm giving you permission to talk back to the preacher. I know it's a trust. I know it's hard to do, but we're going to pretend it's Sabbath school because I know you guys can talk about it. So what are the landmines? What is the landmine? Temptations, sins, things that cause humanity to get hurt. Yeah, luring traps. Okay, what are they? The broad sin, broad selfishness. Well, there's different types of landmines. What are the different types of landmines?
I think Hollywood.
Okay, so entertainment, and we can go to the realms of being sucked into the movie world. That's what you're talking about. Certain movies just draw us in. They're so appealing to us. Our nature just, we want more of it. Definitely. What other things are out there?
Worry.
What is it?
Worry. Anxiety.
Yeah, worry and anxiety and that kind of distress of thinking that you need to accomplish and you're not, and you're beating yourself up. Fear. That's a huge one. Praise the Lord. God says, perfect love. What does it do? Casts out all fear. Yes. You have your hand up?
Yeah, false pictures of God.
Oh, yes. That's a huge landmine. false understandings, false theologies, false religions, and all these. It causes us to be all mixed up, doesn't it? Definitely. We could go on and on, but we don't want to go on and on about landmines, do we? And so here, the Bible has this idea in Revelation 12 that the war is done. Jesus has come. Salvation is now here. But the devil has set up landmines and there's still casualties. Why, if Jesus won the battle on the cross, did he win the battle on the cross? Of course he did. Why are there still casualties? That's what we're looking at. No, God's plan, the devil doesn't think it's possible to walk on this world. The devil doesn't think it's possible to walk on this place and be unscathed by landmines. He doesn't think it's possible. And so God says, I have a plan. I'm going to send, you know what's unique? I was watching, I have a pastor texting group. That's what pastors do for fun. They get a bunch of pastors together, they text. This is my brother and a couple of friends. And we're going to pick on CNN for a moment. But I think it's Don Lemon or someone like that. And he says, my friend says, don't get your religion from CNN. So that was fun. And so I wanted to reach, it was a 27-minute or 27-second clip, so I watched it. And he said something about Jesus. He says, we all know that Jesus wasn't perfect. That's right. I'm sorry if you want to watch it again. He didn't say those exact words, but essentially he says, we all know Jesus erred. We all know Jesus made mistakes or whatever. And, but it was of the tone, he wasn't perfect. And God says, I have a plan. I'm going to send my son. He's going to walk through this world of landmines. And guess what? He's not going to hit a single one. He's not going to hit a single one. In a sense, when people see my son walking through the landmine, they're going to see him not only being careful of like scanning, they're going to see him dancing through the landmines with the joy of God on his heart. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 tells us. Romans gives us a hint and encourages us to walk like Jesus. There is no better witness for Christ than to walk like Jesus in a field of landmines. So let's just chat about landmines just for a second more. How does a landmine work? A typical landmine. There's tripwires and then there's pressure sensors. Normally, if you step in the wrong place, something clicks, then something blows up. You have to step in the right place, which would be the wrong place, for that to happen. Do you guys know much about malaria? I'm going to make a connection between landmines and malaria. Malaria, it's a little protozoa. It's a bug. It's like the size of a mosquito. It's a bug in comparison to the size of a mosquito. It's really small, and it starts in a mosquito, and then it bites you, and then it injects this little protozoa, and then the protozoa swims through your bloodstream, and it finds a nice juicy red donut, which we call a what? A blood cell. And then it infects that blood cell. You may want to just check my science here, but I'm going to tell you as much as I know. And then it infects that blood cell, and it kind of multiplies. And then it's in this phase. It's in its next phase, and it's floating through your blood system. And it's needing a mosquito to bite it. And so somehow through a pheromone signal, through I don't know what it is, some sort of sensory, the mosquito is attracted to where the malaria, the certain growth of the malaria, and it bites you right where the malaria is. Isn't that wild? Because the mosquito needs to bite you where the malaria is so the malaria can keep its life cycle going. So it has this attraction. So Satan's landmines has this attraction. Do you know what makes these landmines attractive? It's the desire of selfishness. The reason why Jesus can walk through a landmine field of sin and not get blown up is he has no attraction to selfishness. Or he doesn't cave under that attraction. So let's go to Romans 12 and verse 1. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a what? A living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. That's what we're going to be looking at. I beseech you. Now, in Paul's day, you can read in 1 Timothy 5:12 and other areas where landmines, after the war has been finished, have still found casualty to Paul's friends and Paul's fellow church members. He saw church members who were coming up into the ranks of Christianity and then have fallen away because they were attracted to different types of temptations and this. And he's writing this lesson, this story, this epistle. He's writing it, and he uses the word "I beseech you," "I encourage you," "I implore you." He's using some sort of passion. Because let's say the Kendall Field. You take a vacation to Cambodia, and you're like hiking in the mountains of Cambodia. You get to a flat valley, and then you realize what? You're in a minefield. How do you speak to your kids? Yes, this is Paul's tone. Urgently, with desire, with passion, with fervor. There's a certain type of danger that still exists in the world of humanity. Paul has experienced, however, not only the danger, he's experienced the beauty of the message that inspires him not to be attracted to the nonsense that the devil has. And so he speaks. And I want you to know, the book of Romans, when you read 1 through 11, it's pretty deep in some theological ideas. There's Romans 1 through 11 is very deep and wonderful, but Romans 12 transitions to more of the practical, how to live the lesson, how to live the message, how to live the book of Romans out. And so that's where we are. And the next section says, by the what? The mercies of God, you present your bodies. Romans 1 through 11, they're the mercies of God. Chapters 1 through 11, it's the mercy of God. And I have a couple highlights. For I'm not ashamed of what? The gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes. He's not ashamed. It's the mercy of God. It gives us power to live. And then Romans 2:11, there is no partiality with God. There is no difference between Jews and Gentiles. Everybody is in the same boat, as our Sabbath school teacher mentioned. Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Then it says in Romans, I think 3:21, but now the righteousness of God is revealed. And in Romans 4:20, speaking about Abraham, it says he did not waver at the promise of unbelief. What was it say? But was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God. So here, Paul, when he says the mercies of God, he is going back and he's telling the whole gospel, the whole righteousness, the power of God, it's all the mercy of God. It's all what God has done for you. By the mercies of God, by the force of God, by the power of God, He is the one that enables you to present your bodies a living sacrifice. There's nothing we can do of ourselves to present our bodies as acceptable. It's what God has done. I love Romans 5, verse 1 and 2. Therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom also we have access by faith into this grace in which we stand and rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. God's mercies are the reason why we still exist. If God wasn't merciful, we couldn't exist. Look at Lamentations 3:22. Through the Lord's mercies, we are not consumed, because His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, because they are new every morning. They give us a power to live every moment. It's the mercies of God. It's the message of Romans 1 through 11. That's what we're looking at, the context. That's the power to walk in this world of sin where casualties still happen. But if we learn the recipe in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, this is just verse 1. Romans 12, 13, 14, and 15 is the practical way to live out the message of chapters 1 through 11. If we learn to do that, but we need to be powered. We need to be powered by the mercy of God. That is the fuel that gets your engine for Jesus going every day. You need it. And so let's look at it now. It says, present your bodies. If you go to Romans 6, you go to verse 13, 16, and 19. You see he's using this term bodies. Romans 6. It's a choice that we make. By the mercies of God, we can make a choice. Romans 6, verse 13, we'll read verse 12. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body, that you should obey its lusts. Do not present your members, your bodies, in a sense, as instruments of unrighteousness to sin, but present yourself to God as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness. Reading verse 16, do you not know that to whom you present yourself as slaves to obey, you are that one slave? So Romans 6 is making a huge point: choice. The mercies of God really help you make the right choice. But it comes down to what choice are you making? Living sacrifice. We present our bodies as a living sacrifice. When you ask a secular person in St. Johnsbury, when I say the word sacrifice, what do you think about? I highly doubt that they'll say a blood sacrifice. But what would they say? You say, when you think of sacrifice, I sacrificed my vacation for such and such. My septic field went out, I sacrificed my vacation because I had to work to pay off that. So it's about, say it again? It's self-denial, and that's pretty accurate of what the biblical idea is here. But that's what they think about. When Paul used the word sacrifice, that's probably there, but he's talking about blood sacrifice. He's basically saying a sacrifice. He's talking about the message of Jesus, how He died. He's talking about the fulfillment of the lamb sacrifice. That's what he says. So when he says living sacrifice, that seems to be an oxymoron. For Paul, sacrifice meant to die. Extreme self-denial. To die. Impossible. Impossible. Galatians 2:20 helps us understand what Paul's saying. Galatians 2:20. What does Galatians 2:20 say? I am what? Crucified with Christ. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. That's what it means to be in a living sacrifice. You are doing extreme self-denial to live for a greater purpose and a greater cause. I want to tell you a story about Robert Trimble. You know Robert Trimble? There's a Beyond the Call of Duty. It's one of those books that I like to read about survival stories. Robert Trimble, he was a bomber, and he flew 39 successful missions. He became a lucky person. They have a more broad, term we'll use here. But then he got a furlough, and as he was taking furlough, the higher-ups say, we'll give you an option. You don't have to go home. You can either go home, take your furlough, and then you can try another set of 39 missions. Very few people got to 39 successful bombing raids over Germany. To do 2 is near impossible. We want you to fly over to the eastern sector, where Russia is, and we want you to get down to aircraft and fly them back. Little did he know, the government, they had another idea. We want Robert Trimble to be a spy, but they didn't tell Robert. Because what was happening is, as the Russians were coming over and taking over German-occupied territory, they were, first of all, taking American aircraft and not giving them back. They weren't playing fair. And what's worse is they were taking American down airlines, airmen, they were taking prisoners of war, and they weren't freeing them. So Robert Trimble, he did not know. He said, okay, I'll go on. This is a safe area. These are allies. And so he didn't know what was happening. The Russians were not playing fair with their allies. And so he gets over there, and then can you imagine this? You're Robert Trimble, you're going over there for one reason. Things are becoming more fishy, the stories get kind of scrambled in your mind. You're wondering what's going on, and then you learn the American government's asking you to be a spy. What would your emotion be? Would you be upset a little bit? I think we would probably be like, they're not being honest with me. But something changed. Something changed in which he saved hundreds and thousands of people. At one time he saved 400 French prisoner of war civilians. 400 of them. And one escape route. He saved 400 people. What changed his attitude? When he went to Auschwitz, 3 weeks after it was liberated, people were still living in the cells. It was winter. He could still smell the stench of death. He says, I'm here for a reason. I need to help these people out. And he was willing. He was willing to be a living sacrifice. Use all his energy for a cause greater than he could imagine. It was at the point where he smelled the stench of cruel humanity that he was willing to help. You know what? That little moment of that little change in his, that's what happens when we see the mercies of God. When we apply the mercies of God to our heart and realize we have that problem. And we switch gears and we want to live for a new cause. That's what makes one want to be a living sacrifice. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless, it's not me. It's God living in me. Listen to this commentary. I love this book, Patriots and Prophets. She quotes Romans 12:1, and then she just describes it a little bit. It's wonderful. We are to give ourselves to the service of God, just as Robert Trimble gave himself to the service of his country. Though he was stripped and everything was like at odds against him, he was willing to give his life to the service of God. And we should seek to make the offering as nearly perfect as possible. When souls were at stake for Robert, he wanted, and everywhere he went, he was being, he could be found out. We need to live as perfect as possible. Those who love him with all the heart will desire to give him the best service of life. And they will be constantly seeking to bring every power of their being into harmony with the laws that will promote their ability to do his will. Robert Trimble's experience, if we see that through the lens of Christianity, that's how we should live. I do think, when I think of the word living sacrifice, I think of a picture in the Old Testament that really burns in my memory, really makes sense about what it means to be a living sacrifice. I think of Exodus, the beginning of Exodus. I think of the man Moses, and he sees an uncommon sight. Now, I don't know, I read an article, that it wasn't impossible for bushes to be burning and nobody started. And they went through some sort of thing like, when the dew is on a leaf or whatever, and the sun comes by, it looks like a magnifying glass, and then it starts on fire. I can't prove that. It sounds kind of fishy. But what made Moses take a double take was not a fire in the middle of the woods or in the middle of the desert. It was a fire in the middle of a desert that wasn't going out. Because when you burn something dry, this last week I dry pine tree or whatever with all needles that are brown. You know what happens when you throw that on the fire? Really fast, it's really exciting, the pyromaniac in me celebrates, then it dies down. Well, this thing was burning like that, but it wasn't dying down. It wasn't going away. It was, and he looks at me, and he looks again, maybe a couple moments later, he looks again, he's like, I gotta check this site out. You know what's unique about that? It's a living sacrifice. Sacrifices were burned, but it wasn't being consumed. What Paul is asking us to do is be a living sacrifice. So people look at us and they look and they're, why are they doing that? Look again. Why are they doing that? It's because if we're living the message out, we are, in a sense, like burning bushes in this world. We live with a different set of motivations. There's something that's changed inside of us. When we live our Christian experience, naturally, are people taking a double take? They did it with Paul. I think they do it with all true believers. When Jesus came to this planet, Satan said, impossible. You can't do it. But it was possible. Then when followers like Peter, John, and Paul started following the footsteps of Jesus, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, they did not love their lives to the death. The devil thought it was impossible for others to follow Jesus. For some reason now, the devil has convinced Christians that sin is stronger than God. Not only in Christianity, but also in Adventism. That for some reason that God has a soft spot with some sinners and he doesn't want them to change. That's okay. You think about me, and that's all that you need to do. But when I read the Gospel in the book of Romans, when I read the Gospels in the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when there's a problem, God gets rid of the problem. He doesn't just toy around, he doesn't make excuses, and sometimes our brain wants to make excuses about problems of sin. And he's convinced the Christian world to say that that's impossible. He convinced the Christian church to say that's impossible. But when I read those three terms, living sacrifice, holy, and acceptable to God, I see that they're speaking the same thing. I see it's talking about a mindset. I see it's talking about behavior. I see it's talking about actions. I see it's talking about a new way of living. I see it's talking about Philippians chapter 2 and verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in the living sacrifice of Christ Jesus. I see Revelation 14 as there's going to be a group of people in the end time who are going to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. And the Lamb walks through this world and he doesn't hit one single landmark. There was a Russian church. In this Russian church, people moved away, jobs got scarce, and there was a pastor, his wife, and a few other people. And they were praying for change. They were praying for revival. They saw their empty pews and said, this is not the way the living church of God should be. And so they started pleading with God. And then this is high up, above the Arctic Circle, high up. And they made they sacrificed their desires. They cut a hole in the ice. Every day they would come around for prayer meeting, every morning, and they would all dip themselves into that Arctic lake every morning. And they'd pray, Lord, we're doing this because we want, when you send people to get baptized, we will baptize them. A church of 8 people became of a church of 20 people, became of a church of 80 people, and grew to triple digits because they were willing to live out the idea of being a living sacrifice. You want St. Johnsbury? You want St. Johnsbury to understand the gospel? Be a living sacrifice. Live your Christianity in such a way that people see that you operate under different principles. Then it says, that's your reasonable service. That's your reasonable service. In other translations, it says, not your reasonable service. That's your spiritual worship. It makes that connection. The word service means worship. You can follow that in the concordance. Whenever you see that word service, it's talking about worship. And when Paul says this is your reasonable worship, or this is your spiritual worship, he's not saying that worship is what you do Sabbath morning. He's not saying worship is what you do only in the mornings when you read a little Bible and you pray a little bit. Worship is bigger than that. Worship is not something that you compartment in your life where, yeah, I do worship here, but then I can act however here. We all tend to think that way. But Paul says, no. This living sacrifice is constant, is daily, it's all the time. It's how we conduct our living. It's a mentality, it's a way of life, it's a lifestyle. It's the way we can walk through a minefield and not step in the wrong area. Worship cannot happen when there's a fire retardant around a person. Sin. Worship can't happen when we're mingled with sin. We saw what happens in our children's story, that when we let God take away sin, then true worship can begin. When someone sees a person at peace in the minefield, where there's trials and anxieties and fears and hurt, when people can see that peace, there's something amazing that happens. That is evangelism. When our worship directs our feet so we can dance in the minefield, there's nothing more attractive than a Christian at peace and joy in the darkest hours. People start to ask questions. Worship, according to Romans 10, is confession as well. It's sharing. Worship includes evangelism. And an Adventist who does not practice the art of sharing is missing a vital piece of worship. I also like to say at my church, board meeting is worship. Or it should be. Do you treat board meetings as worship? Do you treat the sharing in the church direction, or do you just have the little piece of worship for 5 or 10 minutes before board meeting, and then you bring out the gloves, the boxing gloves, and start beating each other up because you want your certain agenda, you want your certain goal? It should be worship. Every aspect of our life should be worship. The way we eat should be worship. Our hobbies, our jobs, that's your reasonable service. When you take heart of the message of God. Our last verse, we're going to look at Hebrews 12:28 and 29. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. For our God is a consuming fire. You see, when we start to take heart of the message of the gospel, it will inspire us. Every step we take is an act of worship. Worship is not an event. Worship is a lifestyle. And that is why Jesus could live in this world without sin, because he made worship a lifestyle. Worship is practical. Worship is praising. Worship is singing. Worship is getting on your hands and knees in the dirt and helping somebody. Worship is helping someone on the side of the road. Worship is letting Jesus run your life the way he would direct his steps. Do you want to be a living sacrifice in St. John's Bury or Newport or wherever you're from? Do you want to be a living sacrifice in California? Do you want to be a living sacrifice in Michigan? When we're willing to take Romans 1:11 to heart and let the message of the gospel sink into its deepest core of our being, then we will be burning bushes in this community. I want to sing hymn 318. There's a reference to Romans 12:1 in 318. Whiter than snow. See if we can find the reference of Romans 12:1. Live in this world and not get pulled down, it's because he learned to embrace his life as worship. And so if we follow those footsteps in every part of our existence, we learn how to worship, we'll be living sacrifices. In the second verse it says, second stanza, Lord, make me a complete sacrifice. I give up myself and whatever I do. And that's the beginning of being a living sacrifice. Let's pray. Father, you're coming soon. The world events are very telling. Your church is not a living sacrifice as it should be. We are not where we need to be. We're thankful that you've moved us along the path. But there's still a future. There's still progress to make in Christianity, and we thank you for that. We thank you for your urging. We thank you for your loving message. Lord, we have not taken the gospel seriously enough. And Lord, we give you our hearts. We ask that you take away our sin. We ask, Lord, as we leave this place, we would have a blessing, and we would know that you're still there for us. And you have a great dream for us. Only if we give you our hearts can that dream be realized. That's what we want to do right now. We pray this in Jesus' name.